Read another article one time. This is why I don't like polls. I seen an article, they said they polled in Washington, D.C.
At the peak of his career, Larry the Cable Guy was earning $50 million annually. Football stadiums were sold out by him. Get-R-Done became his slogan. He disappeared without a trace. And tragedy involving a porta-potty nearly shattered Larry, but behind closed doors he lived a hellish nightmare of addiction, panic attacks, and terrible post-traumatic stress disorder. Living on a ranch in Nebraska these days, the guy who was once the biggest star in comedy is now prepared to explain why he left the industry. Pawnee City, Nebraska is the birthplace of Daniel Lawrence Whitney, better known as Larry the Cable Guy, who came into this world on February 17, 1963. As a child, he enjoyed the basic joys and arduous labor of life on an 80-acre farm. The Everly Brothers guitarist, Tom Whitney, was a devout Christian and his son's father. Household management was entrusted to his mother, Shirley. Despite its banality, Larry's upbringing in a small town laid the groundwork for his comedic style. The family's relocation to West Palm Beach, Florida, altered his life when he was 16 years old. Larry was thrust into an entirely new setting when his father accepted a position as a school administrator. After finishing high school in 1982 at Berean Christian School, he participated on the football team. I moved on to college. Before going to the University of Nebraska, Lincoln to study speech and theater, he attended Georgia Baptist University of America. What really caught people off guard was when they were in college. As a joke, Larry began to mimic the thick Southern accents of his roommates, who were from Texas and Georgia, respectively. The accent became permanent over time. His comedic timing was consistent, but he finally found his niche with this new voice. The degree remained uncompleted. As early as his junior year, he had a clear goal in mind. Comedy was beckoning, and he was impatient. It was in the early 90s when Larry got his big break in the radio industry. Although he never appeared on the shows as himself, he began making cameos on Ron and Bob and Tom. He came up with the idea for Larry the Cable Guy instead. His views were strong, and he had a lot of over-the-top Southern humor. His antics were outrageous, his vocabulary was thick, and his quips were hilarious. Get-R-Done was one of those expressions that would come to represent him. He was adored by audiences. He began giving live performances as Larry the Cable Guy when his radio segments became extremely successful. He initially appeared in official bookings with that name in 1995. At that point, the persona became more than simply a radio skit. It was who he was. He came clean later on about the fact that he could toggle the accent on and off. His supporters, meanwhile, were unconcerned. People could relate to his stories since they were based on his experiences, and his comedy was genuine. For many years, Larry honed his act while playing in dive pubs throughout the nation. His gags revolved around the peculiarities of rural life, working-class hardships, family eccentricities, and small-town America. Just by pointing out something as ordinary as a Snuggie, he could make a humorous point. He had a simple sense of humor. It was simple, approachable, and entertaining. The years 2000 to 2006 were Larry the Cable Guy's golden years. Because of the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, he became a household name in the world of comedy. He was an assistant to Ron White and Jeff Foxworthy in the meteoric rise of a straightforward stand-up tour. With over $15 million in yearly revenue, they performed over 100 events every year. There was more at stake than humor here. The objective was to reach out to those who didn't always see themselves reflected in the entertainment industry. Because Larry was fluent in their language, a large crowd flocked to see him. On January 14, 2000, the inaugural performance took place in Omaha, Nebraska. A total of around 7,500 tickets were sold. By the time the tour concluded in March 2006 at the Warner Theater in Washington, D.C., they had performed 124 gigs for about 500,000 spectators, generating over $16 million in revenue alone from ticket sales. The tour, however, encompassed more than simply live performances. It spawned a number of related media, including DVDs, TV specials, and Blue Collar Radio, a Sirius satellite radio channel. Blue Collar Comedy Tour is going to be. The film's release year was 2003. It was not a smash hit at the box office, but it did become beloved by many. Beyond all else, it popularized Larry's slogan, "Get-R-Done," throughout the United States. As the tour demonstrated, stand-up comedy could attract an audience as large as that of a large music festival. comedy clubs have given way to stadia as the preferred venue for gigs. A household name in the United States, Larry quickly rose to prominence because to his signature sleeveless shirts and deep southern drawl. Yet, not everyone were enthusiastic. Critics said Larry was too stereotypical in his portrayal of the redneck. A lot of his humor were around over-the-top rural living, tumultuous family get-togethers, and hunting disasters. Some people thought he was just bringing out more stereotypes about rural Americans, though his admirers felt otherwise. They didn't take his comments as a sign of contempt. They assumed he belonged to their group. He never made fun of country living. It glowed with joy. He made light of commonplace problems. He was more than just funny to those who saw him. I could relate to him. His actions were seen by some as antiquated, while others admired them as a brave declaration of independence and nationalism. One thing was evident: he was liked or hated by many. He had touched a sensitive spot in American humor. While on the road, Larry also surpassed all but a handful of comedians in terms of album sales. Lord, I Apologize, his 2001 CD, exposed listeners to his unique blend of satire and genuine observation. The Right to Bear Arms Act of 2005 then raised the stakes even higher. As far as comedy albums go, it achieved a remarkable debut at number 7 on the Billboard 200. With the rise of digital downloading, platinum records like this were becoming increasingly rare. Each album sold over 1 million copies. Sales weren't the only measure of success. In 2006, The Right to Bear Arms was nominated for Best Comedy Album at the Grammys. It was evidence that Larry wasn't a one-hit wonder. In the mainstream, he belonged. At the same time that he was dominating the charts, he was selling out venues. Then 2006 rolled along, solidifying Larry's status as a household name even further. He was then cast by Pixar as the voice of Matter, the endearing but silly tow truck in the animated film Cars. Earning more than $1 billion globally, the picture was a smashing success. Along with billions in good sales, it spawned 2 sequels, 2011's Cars 2 and 2017's Cars 3. In a short amount of time, Mater became a fan favorite at Pixar. His catchphrase, "My name is Mater," like Tom Otter, but without the 2, became instantly recognized to both children and their parents. Just for lending his voice as Mater in the first picture, Larry allegedly earned more than $5 million. However, the true satisfaction came from knowing that his children will have a lasting memento of him. The movies weren't the end for Mater. He made cameo appearances in spin-offs, theme park attractions, and even Cars on the Road, a Disney Plus series. Over the course of the series, Larry's voice grew ubiquitous. He demonstrated he had breadth for a comic renowned for stand-up, yet it was an unexpected turn. In the same night, he could provide joy to a room full of grown-ups and, in the next, millions of kids. After then, it was exclusively in the United States. It premiered on February 8, 2011, and continued until 2013 on the History Channel. He took up strange jobs and American traditions in each episode of his exciting adventures. In addition to riding with the Hells Angels and making moonshine in the woods, he also fought gators. His characteristic remark went up at the beginning of every program. "America, pay attention. I adore this nation, my name is Larry the Cable Guy." With 4.1 million viewers, Larry Makes Moonshine was the first episode. A whirlwind 3 seasons ensued after that. His many roles in the show included that of fisherman, sharpshooter training with the U.S. Army, and construction worker on a medieval castle. Despite its randomness and occasional silliness, the program never failed to entertain. No matter how bad things got, Larry always managed to make friends and transform ordinary situations into unforgettable adventures. The spectacle may have seemed like endless entertainment, but there was a price to pay for it. Larry was on the go 6 days a week for filming. A little over 5 and 6 years old, his boys were already watching the show. They were accomplishing goals he couldn't witness while he was out filming. The separation strained his marriage and caused him to miss out on crucial school events and occasions. There could be no doubt about Only in America's success. Larry, on the other hand, was secretly battling the stress of his packed schedule and the continual travel. After that, in 2012, there was the porta-potty incident. Larry had done a great deal of crazy stuff on the program before, but this was out of character. He was pushed to his limit cleaning the porta-potties during the event. "The most disgusting thing I've ever done," was what he eventually dubbed it. Although Larry considered the incident to be more than simply another trick, it went on to become notorious. This made him question his level of tolerance for extreme forms of entertainment. Even though there were millions of people watching, he decided to leave after the third season. It was a successful concert. Nonetheless, he decided it wasn't worth it to miss the formative years of his children. Instead of wasting another year trying to get high ratings, he wanted to spend time with them. The influence of Only in America was long-lasting. The program is still one of Larry's most successful solo ventures, and fans continue to watch repeats. But he prioritized his family over his celebrity in the end. As far as he was concerned, that was the optimal choice. Daniel Lawrence Whitney, better known as Larry the Cable Guy, made a living by making people laugh. Family, sacrifice, and a strong desire to give back have molded his life away from the limelight. Kara Whitney, his wife, plays a significant role in his quest. Larry was in the Los Angeles area in 2004 honing his stand-up routines. He crossed paths with Kara, a Wisconsin radio DJ who had spent her childhood on a ranch in that location. They clicked right away. An odd detail was one of the factors that brought them together. The aroma of livestock trucks was pleasant to both of them. Wedding bells rang just 1 year later, on July 3, 2005. They eschewed a lavish Hollywood ceremony in favor of a more understated one. A Nebraska open field served as the setting for the event. It was inexpensive, unassuming, and cost only $180. Their decision revealed their character. Kara has always preferred to keep a low profile. Her priorities shifted from radio to writing, philanthropy, and family raising when she eventually left the medium. A price had to be paid for Larry's meteoric rise to the top of his field. Due to his extensive touring schedule, up to 287 performances each year, he was unable to be there for his children throughout their formative years. Their children, Wyatt and Reagan, were born to him and Kara. Larry was so busy that he rarely had time to spend with them, and Kara noticed this. She insisted that he spend less time touring and more time with his family. He changed a lot in 2015. He reduced his annual show output from around 300 to less than 25, a 90% reduction. Because of that choice, he was able to spend more time with his family at their Nebraska ranch. Reagan and Wyatt had an extraordinary upbringing. As children, they rode throughout the nation on tour buses with their dad. Larry wished above all else that they had a father figure who would be available for them in times of need. Larry's commitment to his family went beyond the confines of his house. He started the Git-R-Done Foundation with Kara in 2009 to give back to those less fortunate, capitalizing on his success. Charities such as children's hospitals, veterans clubs, and families dealing with medical issues have received almost $7 million from the foundation. An important part of their mission was a $5 million gift to Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children, which they felt strongly about, to aid in the study and treatment of hip dysplasia. The Madonna Rehabilitation Hospital and Operation Homefront, which assists military families, have both received assistance from the foundation. At one point in his career, Larry was among the most paid American comedians. He was making almost $50 million each year between 2006 and 2012. Get-R-Done was his motto, and he became famous for his outrageous hillbilly demeanor. He played before sold-out crowds in arenas as large as those at comedy clubs around the nation. He was the first comic to do it in 2009, and no one other accomplished it again until Kevin Hart in 2015. He continued to be successful in other areas as well. The Right to Bear Arms and Lord, I Apologize, his albums, both achieved gold status and generated much more revenue. It was followed by endorsements. He had a tens of millions of dollars agreement with the over-the-counter heartburn medicine Prilosec. He put his fortune into real estate with all that cash. His 2016 property purchase in North Scottsdale, Arizona was for $3.6 million. In addition to a golf course, jacuzzi, outdoor kitchen, and 4 bedrooms, the property also had a pool. Not everyone was pleased with his lavish lifestyle. Critics have pointed out the hypocrisy of a comic who has amassed millions of dollars perpetuating a blue-collar stereotype. Difficulty followed. His tax deductions were the subject of an investigation by the Internal Revenue Service. A component of his performance was donning trucker hats and sleeveless flannel shirts. Additionally, he deducted them as company expenditures. The IRS, however, remained unconvinced. They said they weren't eligible until he wore them exclusively throughout performances. The attorneys on his side battled hard to defend the write-offs. However, a protracted and costly conflict ensued. Another legal issue arose for him in 2014. His promoters sued him for breach of contract after he canceled many events citing tiredness. They said they lost a ton of money because of the cancellations. During his prime, Larry managed a steady schedule of touring, endorsement deals, and film productions. It was exhausting to be under such constant stress. He was supported by his teammates, who said he needed a vacation. Some fans and promoters, though, had other opinions. Then a dramatic shift occurred. His reservations fell 60% after 2015. There has been a shift in the comedic landscape. Comedians like Hannah Gadsby and Bo Burnham, who catered to younger audiences with their stories about real people and societal problems, began to gain popularity. Larry's over-the-top hillbilly persona wasn't connecting with audiences as it once did. His comedic style began to feel out of step with the growing importance of cultural sensitivity at that period. His subsequent stand-up specials, such as 2020's Remain Seated, were less successful, but he persisted nevertheless. He was raking in $50 million annually at one time. Among comedians, he was a household name. However, as the years passed, the people who used to pack stadiums to watch him began seeking other things. Larry has always been forthright with his views, but he made history in 2016 by endorsing a really bizarre candidate. A Trump supporter, and by Trump supporter he meant Gary Johnson, was his declaration during an appearance on Fox and Friends. After that, he made an even more memorable joke about it. "Oh, I see. The option is, would I rather have someone else defecate on me than myself? My pants are going to be the first to go, I suppose." It was a strange method for him to express his displeasure with Trump and Clinton. Not only was he uneasy with Clinton, but he also wasn't entirely behind Trump. Johnson, the libertarian contender, was his unofficial choice. Many were captivated by his statement. A few people chuckled. It was perplexing to some. Even Johnson's campaign acknowledged his Twitter post and asked him to elaborate. Larry wasn't being lighthearted. In 2016, he was conveying a genuine sense of dissatisfaction with politics. Among other things, he addressed the national anthem protests by Colin Kaepernick. While he disagreed with Kaepernick's choice to kneel, he supported the quarterback's freedom to protest. Larry was a fascinating character because of his dual perspective. Particularly because a large portion of his fan base was ardently loyal to Trump. While some praised his forthrightness, others felt he ought to have been completely supportive of Trump. This incident ignited discussions over the impact of celebrity endorsements on voters, particularly when they were intended as jokes. Some took Larry's remarks as an indication of the widespread belief among Americans that the election was a poor decision. Some people assumed he was joking. Whatever the case may be, his peculiar support garnered media attention and maintained his place in political discourse. Years down the road, in February of 2023, he was once again embroiled in a political scandal, this time involving Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Greene shouted and waved her arms during President Joe Biden's entire State of the Union address, essentially heckling him. Her performance was mentioned in Larry's tweet. Like every comedian's ex-girlfriend showing up 6 days after the split and taking a seat in the back. Some of his more conservative supporters found the joke offensive. Many thought he was being unjust in his assault on Greene. Woke was even a term used by some. Larry defended himself without hesitation. There was no political humor about this. Absolutely unbelievable. Some of you need to lighten up. Sheesh, he responded with a tweet. He wasn't totally against Greene, even if he was facing opposition. He commended her bravery but thought she might benefit from public speaking training.